Now tell me a story.
Vera Wong. Oh, you're gonna love her. What's this? What's the title? Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murders. Starts out by introducing, of course, our main character, Vera, who we love. Vera lives in Chinatown in San Francisco. She has Vera Wang's world famous tea shop. She felt like people know Vera Wang, so if they see that she has a tea shop, they'll be curious and want to go in. She's crossing her fingers, Vera Wang never finds out and sues her. That's what kind of woman she is. She is the best.
That's amazing.
She has one son. She loves to make sure Tilly is living his best life. Starts off with she wakes up at 4:30 and she texts her son. She's like, you better be up because healthy people get up early. Wakes up, goes for a walk, goes down. She lives like right above her tea shop. And so she'll go down, open up the shop, and wait for her customer. Customer, because yes, this is usually her only customer of the day. Cute little old Alex. He's another cute guy, lives down the street. He's just been supporting her, comes in every day. They sit and chat, talk about their kids, and then he goes back home. She sits in the shop the rest of the day. No one comes in. It's just really sad. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's her life. Text her son multiple times a day to make sure he's doing what he's supposed to. Son hardly ever responds because he's sick of his mom telling him how to live his life. Mm-hmm. So one day, Vera wakes up, 4:30. She goes for a walk, goes downstairs. There's a dead man in her tea shop.
Oh my gosh.
Dead. Just kidding. He's not cut. But
I thought you said this was lighthearted.
Ouch! I wanted to add this suspense.
I don't like this
He's
scene anymore.
dead. So, Vera, I just love her so much. So she calls the cops, and while she's waiting for the cops to show up, she's like, I'll help him out. She grabs a Sharpie, outlines the dead body like you're supposed to, cleans up a little bit. She didn't want the police to think she ran a crappy shop, but she also didn't want to get rid of the evidence. She's kind of tidied. And she also found a jump drive in the guy's hand. And she's like, well, that looks interesting. Takes the jump drive, hides it. Because she wants to be the detective. She wants to figure this out. So the cops show up and she's like, look, I have laid it out for you. She is telling the cops. She makes a special tea for the cops that helps their minds be more sharp. And she's just like, this is going to change my life. Because once the cops know that there's this tea that can make them more sharp, they'll be asking for it every day. And then I'll have 1 million customers. And then this is the answer to my prayers, kind of. I don't know if she prays. Anyways. What else is... Vera Wong does a lot of weird things.
Oh,
but I'm trying to remember all of them.
She prays.
Cops get there. They do not appreciate the tea. They say, ma'am, we're here on business. We're not going to drink your tea. Ma'am, why is there Sharpie around the dead body? And you touched him. You're messing with evidence, tampering with evidence. And they're just super annoyed with Vera. Which you can kind of... Okay, that's fair. But she's just trying to do her job. And so she starts bringing up oh, it must have been murder. Murder, murder, murder. And the cops are like, lady, first, leave. Second, how do you know he didn't just come in, he was wasted? I don't know. Let's not jump to conclusions. She thinks they should have taken more evidence. She thinks they should have done a lot more. But they're like, peace out, Girl Scout. We'll talk to you later. Take the body. Yeah.
If you guys would look at me more often, I wouldn't have a beat like that. I'm just kidding. Please don't look at me more often. You keep your hand there, and I'll keep my hand here.
Your reflexes. A couple days later, she notices there's a man outside who, is just staring at the shop, kind of trying to decide, do I come in? And she's like, suspicious. Only murders return to the scene of the crime. So she goes over and she's like, hey, come get some tea. And he's like, hi, lady. She's like, hey, what you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm a news reporter for BuzzFeed. And she's like, oh, okay. Did you know there was a murder here? The obituary of that guy kind of brought me here. Can you tell me anything about it? What do you know? And so she's like, cops are useless. They know nothing. It was a murder. Blah. So this book jumps from like chapter to chapter as different people's perspectives. So different people talk. So it jumps to Julia and her perspective. And Julia and her husband, Marshall, got in a really big fight the night before. He said he was leaving her. And she was so angry, she like gathered all of his stuff, threw it into garbage bags. Like, this is the worst day. They have a 2-year-old daughter named Emma. She gets a knock at the door. And she's like, what the heck? I never get a knock at the door. It's the police to tell her that her husband was found dead in a tea shop.
Well, I don't like
in
this
Chinatown.
now.
The cops are, consoling her. But as they look around, they're like, huh, she's already like packed up all of her husband's things. So Julia feels a little bit skittish of like, oh my gosh, I'm going through a lot. Like, I thought my marriage was over and now he's dead and now I look like the murderer because all of his stuff. So the next person we learn about is Sana. She is standing outside once again trying to decide to go in. She decides, you know what, we're just going to go in, talk to the owner. And as she's walking in, Ricky's walking out. Vera is like, such good business today, like, woohoo! So she was like, did you know there was a murder? And she's like, yes, that's why I'm here. I do podcasts, so I'd like to know all about what you know and all about your stuff. Little do you know, though, Ricky doesn't work for BuzzFeed. He actually is just interested in Marshall. Sana doesn't do podcasts. Just interested in Marshall. They want to know more details. Did they return to the crime because they are the murderers? I don't know. The last character's name is Oliver. Oliver is Marshall's twin. Distant twin, though. Not distant. You can't be a distant twin. Like, they haven't really talked in years. Marshall was not really the best brother to Oliver. They had a distant relationship. Whenever something would go wrong, Marshall would be like, it was Oliver's fault. He's the bad twin. Just would always blame things on him, and people would believe him. Oliver, though, was his mom's favorite. When they were 6 years old, she was in the kitchen making ices for Oliver. The ice was getting all over the place, fell on the floor. She slipped, fell, bumped her head really, really bad, and passed away. So Marshall and their dad had always kind of blamed Oliver for her death. Which I'm like,
A little harsh.
I see, that's so sad. Oliver has just had this really torn relationship with Marshall, his dad. He's just kind of been an outcast for years. Heard about his brother's death. Went to the tea house to just kind of get closure. But it kind of scares her because when he walks in, she's like, that's the dead man. Like, they're practically identical. So she was like, ah! Scared the crap out of him. I forgot about that part until right now. I'm sorry. I just tried to add.
Very nervous.
So we have Vera, Julia, the wife, Sana. I was going to have you bring your whiteboard and then I forgot. Sana, the podcast lady.
Mm-hmm.
Ricky, the BuzzFeed, and Oliver, the twin. So one day, Vera calls up Ricky and says, hey, Ricky, come to my tea shop. I want to talk to you. So Ricky's like, okay.
How does she get their phone numbers?
Phone book.
Oh, I don't know. But she does.
Okay.
She just is that resourceful, take matters into her own hands kind of woman.
We're gonna go with it.
Yeah. She actually gets mad at him. Ricky, I've been checking BuzzFeed every day. Where the crap's my article? I think you need to take better pictures of my place so that people know where the murder happened. Come on down. Let's take some pictures. And so he's like, okay, crazy lady. But he wants to investigate more. He kind of wants to know more about Marshall's death, which makes you suspect, like, why? Why, Ricky? So he comes down and he's talking to Vera, and she even says, like, you are my first suspect. And he's like, what? Okay, so I'm on her list. And he's like, like, why am I a suspect? She's like, oh, you came back and you are willing to come, like, investigate this crime. I think you're trying to, like, hide stuff. And she's very honest with him. Like, you're number one. Suspect one. She also calls up Sana and says, Sana, what's your podcast called? I want to listen to it. Do you know what? Just come on down. I want to talk to you some more. And so, suspect 2 walked in. And they're like, what suspect? So they're both like, oh my gosh, this lady's gonna send this to the police. Like, they're kind of freaking out. But she is just trying to get more information. So she's like, did you know Marshall? Did you know Marshall? In their heads, they have a lot of dialogue of like, that neither of them liked Marshall. They have beef with him. That's why they're pretending to be reporters. Mm-hmm. But you don't know what beef, and you don't know why they don't like him. You just know that something is up. Oliver walks in, and she's like, suspect number 4 has walked in. And they're like, suspect 4, you skipped 3. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll go visit 3 later. But they all just talking about Marshall. The Ricky and Sana, though, can't really give a lot of information because they don't want people to know that they know him. So they're mostly there to just listen and gather. Mm-hmm. Vera then is like, okay, who can drive? Let's go to suspect 3's house. And they're like, well, who's suspect 3? And they're like, oh, her name's Julia. She's the Marshall's wife. And Oliver's like, we can't go visit the widow a couple days after her husband dies. Like, that's really inconsiderate. She's like, but she's a suspect. We must. And they're like, well, why do you think she's a suspect? And she's like, I saw her walking down the street and came to see my shop. She never came in, but she's like, something's up. Let's go visit her. So they go, knocking on the door. How they got the address?
Oliver, brother-in-law.
Oh, no, yeah, because Oliver called up Julia, and he hasn't talked to her for years, and he's like, hey, can I come see you? And she's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, with a crazy group of people? And so they show up at Julia's house. At one point, though, I think this has happened by now. At one point, she calls her son Tilly. And she's like, Tilly, how do flash drives work? And he's like, you plug it into a computer and then it uploads. And she's like, yeah, I did that, but it has like a password lock on it. And he's like, what are you getting into?
How did you get this?
And she's like, oh, you didn't hear? There was a murder in my shop, and it's from the dead guy. And he's like, isn't that evidence? She's like, yeah, the police were stupid. I kept it. And so the flash drive is kind of into play. She's trying to look into it, and then Tilly's like, Mom, if they find out you plugged it in and it's like tracked to something, you look super suspicious. And so Tilly's really worried about his mom at this point. So they go to Julia's house. Julia and Oliver obviously know each other because they were in-laws, but they know each other because they were best friends in high school. They were actually friends before Marshall and Julia got together. And so they reminisce a lot. Oliver's just really happy to see her again. He barely knows his niece because just Marshall was so mean to him and just didn't want him in his life. And Ricky and Sana are just kind of like, why are we here? How did we get here? What's going on? So while they're there talking, they get a knock on the door and the police show up. And so at that point, Ricky and Sana are like, okay, peace out, we're gonna go. The police get there and they're like, why are all of you here? Mm-hmm. Tea lady, what you doing?
They're like, you again.
I know. And so they're like, we actually have like finished the autopsy, we have the cause of death. And so Vera's like, perfect, sit, everyone, let's listen. She's going through all these things in her head, like radioactive stuff, maybe poison, maybe like a battle. She's like getting hyped up for like, what are they gonna say? This is Christmas for Vera. She's so excited. And then they say that he died of bird allergies. And she is ticked because there's no ducks in San Francisco. So how the crap did he die from a duck?
Bird allergies, like he's allergic to birds?
He's allergic to birds. And so he died.
Like the dander? Yeah.
The dander of birds. Bird dander.
And she doesn't have birds in her shop.
And she doesn't have birds in her shop. So Vera is like, huh? But it's a murder. Like, how do you die from murder by bird dander? She's very confused. And honestly, very disappointed. She is so sad. It kind of like changes scenes back to Ricky and Sana. They're walking down the street. Both of them kind of have a little like, oh, they're cute. Oh, he's cute. Like they have a little connection. As he's talking to Sana, he's like, wait, okay, she was at the tea shop the same time I went. So that's why Vera thinks she's a suspect. And if Vera thinks she's a suspect, even though she's crazy, she might be onto something. So, like, be cautious. And then he just thinks about how much he dislikes Marshall. He doesn't say this to Sana, but he's like, oh, I just really need to get more information about what happened the night of Marshall's death. And he's just really kind of, like, obsessed.
But we don't know how they know Marshall?
We don't know how they know Marshall yet. And it's just irritating him. He gets a text from Vera that says, Marshall died from duck allergies. And he's like, whew, okay. And he's kind of relieved about it. Suspicious.
So maybe he, like, did something, he's like, did I kill this guy accidentally?
Yeah. Makes you wonder, why is Marshall so interested in this? All right.
You make me nervous.
Sana, it talks about kind of her childhood. Her mother, I think, is Chinese. And she was grateful for her mother because most Chinese parents are very, like, best education, best college. You will be a doctor, you will be a lawyer. Like, where her mom was like, oh, you're really good at painting. Yes, like, explore creativity, explore all these things. But her mom was kind of like, are you painting enough? Are you doing enough? She was still kind of on her. As she's talking about her mom, just talking about how grateful she was that she let her be a painter, it kind of wraps back around to Marshall, and she's just so mad at Marshall because she has a big painter's block because of him. And she can't further her career, she can't become better because, like, until she figures out what happens to Marshall, she just, like, can't move on. She's so angry at him. Which, once again, ties you back to why. Then it cuts back to Vera. Vera makes oodles of noodles, maybe, and just lots and lots of food, packs it all up, takes it to the police station, and is like, hey, police, got you some food.
Ramen sounds so good right now.
That does sound really good right now. So she goes to the police station, gives them food, and says, guys, I've decided there's no ducks in San Francisco. You can't be right. And the police people are like, oh my gosh, lady. There are pigeons in San Francisco. There are birds in San Francisco. Like, yes, he could die by bird dandruff. Like, it doesn't have to be duck.
Yeah.
Yes. And she's just, like, so angry. Like, no! Like, that's not the way he died. She just wants it to be something more. Then it cuts back to Oliver. Oliver is kind of playing in his head. The night before Oliver died, Marshall died.
I was like, Oliver died? No.
The night before Marshall died, he and Oliver had a conversation. This conversation's kind of eating at him, and he feels bad about it, and so, but it doesn't really go into detail. Once again, what happened the night Marshall died? But he gets a call from Julia, and Julia's like, hey, I just got a call telling her that Marshall had a studio apartment that she was unaware of. A secret studio apartment. And she's like, I have Emma / I don't want to go check it out. I'm scared of what I'll see. I'm scared it'll paint a bad picture. Oliver, I need you to go to the studio.
Yeah, she's like, I don't need any more trauma.
Yeah.
Like,
please go take care of this. And she said, like, please, if there's anything that had to do with him, like, not being faithful in our marriage, I don't want to know. Like, just keep it to yourself. So, like, okay, so he goes to the studio apartment. He gets there. There's just boxes. Boxes and boxes and boxes everywhere. And he's like, well, that's the last thing. Just a storage unit? Like, why would you rent an apartment to hold storage? Starts looking through these boxes, and it's artwork. There's sculptures, there's paintings, there's just artwork. Goes back to Julia's house and tells her, like, you'll never guess. Has all these paintings. Did Marshall, like, get into art all of a sudden? And she's like, no, not that I'm aware of. Like, that's really random. So they bring all of these boxes to the house just to kind of show her what was in the apartment. At the same time, Sana is wanting to dig a little bit deeper. So Sana has called Julia and asked if she could come over to just talk to her and get some more information for her podcast. So while they drop off the boxes, Sana walks in and she's fuming. She sees all of these art pieces. And she's so mad because she's like, oh my gosh. So then you kind of make a connection of like, oh, she's the artist. She does art. Art boxes. Maybe there's a connection there. But she sees all this art and it makes her really angry and she wants to ask more. But she also doesn't want Julia to know that she has a connection to Marshall. She wants to be this random reporter. So she, like, tries to hide her anger and ask questions without being biased and, like, giving too much information away. But while she does this, Oliver and Julia both start to be a little suspicious of, like, wait, did you know Marshall? And they kind of start to think, Vera was right. She's very suspicious. Maybe she is a suspect. Kind Ricky gets a call from Vera that someone has broken into her shop. And things have been destroyed, things have been smashed. Her tea house is now just a mess. A mess. I know. So she calls Ricky, she calls Sana, she calls Oliver, she calls Julia. Everyone comes to help her kind of clean up her mess. And while they're all changing their dialogues. What?
Where's the son?
Oh, the son's too busy. She doesn't bother the son. Because these are all suspects. She's got to keep the suspects close. Even though it was bird dandruff.
One of you did this, so you're going to clean it up.
Yeah. So after he hangs up with Vera, he's just kind of in his thoughts. And he goes back to the night that he was killed. He hints at a confrontation that they had. That there was a physical confrontation and that he has never been so angry at someone than he was that night at Marshall. Red flag.
It just keeps giving you little
It gives you little
pieces
here and there.
Okay.
Sana gets the phone call from Vera, hangs up, thinks about the night that he died. She had scratched him, and they had also gotten into this big argument.
Who's this?
Right?
That was a busy night for Marshall.
Right.
He gets in a fight with his wife, gets in a fight with Sana, gets in a fight with Ricky.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of time does this guy have?
Seriously. And why is he ticking everyone off?
Yeah.
It's like a ticking time bomb. They're helping her clean up the shop. She's just in distress. She's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Julia offers, hey, you can come stay with Emma and I. I'm actually starting photography again. And so it'd be really nice to have you around the house to help with Emma when I have to go do photography. And we'll help you, clean up your shop.
Okay.
Super nice. And so she's like, okay, sounds good. She just loves it. She loves Emma so much. She loves, having a purpose. Mm-hmm. She makes dinner. Julia is able to go do photography. She stopped doing photography for a long time. Why? Because Marshall said it was a waste of her time and a waste of her creative abilities and, just a waste. So she's really excited to just, do something for her because she earned it. Mm-hmm. Vera finds the laptop in the apartment when she's living with Julia and Emma. She is like, ooh, I'll put the flash drive in there. There might be something. Once she puts it in the laptop, she starts to see files. In these files, guess what they're named? Sana, Ricky. They have weird business on this laptop.
Okay.
And so once again, Vera's like, suspects! I must ask them how they know Marshall. And
I feel like they're all friends now.
I know. They are all besties.
But they're all her suspects too.
So that's kind of weird. They're all they get together all the time, but then they're like, oh yeah, I hope they didn't kill him. So she sees the files, decides to talk to Sana, and is like, Sana, I know you're not a podcaster. What's your connection to Marshall? I know you have a connection to Marshall. And they're good friends now, and she's like, okay, I need to come clean. I'm an artist, and I was going to school, and Marshall showed up and just made me feel so confident and oh, you have awesome paintings. I would love to help you sell them. And just made her feel oh, okay, great. Was I will help you sell all these things. But then he kind of took her paintings. He made a bunch of money off of her paintings. She made zero. She didn't realize that as she was making a contract with him, that he would get everything. She would pretty much get nothing.
Asshole.
So that's why she has this painter's block, is because he ruined her career. He made it so that she
and she's like, I'm an idiot. I shouldn't have trusted him.
Shouldn't have trusted him. He's this horrible, horrible human. Vera's like, okay, that makes sense. And then she tells Vera, I met up with him the night that he died, and I scratched his face. What if they found my DNA? She's just freaking out. That's why she's so interested in wanting to know what the police are doing, is because she feels very guilty. Yes. And that she could be traced back to the murder. Vera's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Vera's, yeah. Okay, girl. Vera calls Ricky and says, Ricky, you have a file on this laptop. You know Marshall. How do you know Marshall? And so he comes clean. Had this brother that was doing horrible in school. They thought he had all these learning disabilities. Turns out he was actually brilliant. He was just bored in school and he needed to be pushed. And so he wanted his little brother to just have the best education. And so he was willing to work multiple jobs. He was wanting to do anything he could to help his brother. So he saw a job posting that Marshall put up saying, hey, I'll pay you $25,000 to do this cyber security robot thing so that he could steal other people's files. So illegal, but he's willing to pay top dollar, $25,000. So Ricky thought about it for a minute. I was like, oh, I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to do anything I'm not supposed to. But at the same time, that's a good chunk of money. So he's like, okay, I'll do it. So he goes to Marshall. He does what he wants him to do. He makes it so that he can like sneak in and get people's money. Marshall gives him $1,000 and says, good job. And he's like, wait. We agreed on $25,000. And he's like, oh yeah, do you want me to tell your job that you are able to do all these illegal things and that you did it for me and you'll go to jail? And he's like, well. So, what does he do? Calls him all these names. He wants to get in a fight, but Marshall drives away. And he's just fuming and he's so angry. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to go. So he gets in his car, follows him to a restaurant, walks in, says, hey Marshall, punches him in the face. And then he's like, well crap. This is a public place. What am I doing? Next day finds out that he died. So he's like, crap. Maybe my punch killed him. Vera, though, being the kind woman she is, pinches his arm. She's like, it wasn't you. Don't flatter yourself. You're not that strong. But he's like, still, I feel like people at the restaurant could say, hey, that guy attacked him that night. He's the murderer, right? So he's just so nervous about being caught. They spend a lot of time with Vera. Vera takes Sana to the beach and is like, here, take this stick, start drawing in the sand. If you don't like it, guess what? The sea's gonna wash it up. Let's
start somewhere.
Let's start.
Yeah.
And it's very therapeutic for Sana, and so every morning she starts going to the beach to draw pictures in the sand. And Emma and Vera will join her. Cute. And then one day Ricky came along and they had lunch together. And Sana and Ricky were just kind of like buddying up.
Oh, Ricky.
Oliver and Julia are putting the tea house together, reminiscing about good old times. And Oliver's like, hey, I think I'm going to go drop off groceries at my dad's house. You want to come with so you can see him and Emma can see him? And she's like, yeah, sure. The dad doesn't open the door. And like Oliver's like, yeah, my dad and I aren't that close, but like Julia and Emma are here. Like, come on. Your granddaughter's here. The dad's like, no, I don't want to talk to you. Like, get off. Go away. So like, what the? But Emma, like, if nothing else, come see your granddaughter. Mm-hmm. And so they leave the groceries there and they walk away and they're like, that's just really, really weird.
But also he's grieving.
That's true. You know, I didn't think about that. I was just like, okay, Grandpa. Goes back to Julia's perspective. She sees Oliver has been writing a book. And she sees his manuscript on the bed. He gave it to Vera to just read through. / Vera might have stole it. That could have very well happened.
She did. It was in the passenger.
That's right. Vera stole it.
Driving.
And she just kind of told him one day, like, by the way, I'm reading your book. It's a little slow. It's putting me to sleep. So she starts reading it. And the whole manuscript is about how there's these twin brothers. And this boy has a friend and he likes this girl, but then the brother swoops in and steals her. And he has all this hatred in this book of like, I need to do something to my brother. Like, I need to get rid of my brother. Oh. And so Julia's like, oh my. Dun, dun, dun. Julia's like, crap. He has feelings for me. I don't have feelings for him. So like, she just kind of was like taken back of like, this isn't how this is supposed to go. And he talks about in his book killing his brother. As she's reading that, there's a knock at the door. It's the police officers.
Are they still like, is the case closed for them?
The case is kind of back open because of the break-in at Vera's place. Mm-hmm. They were kind of like, why didn't no one tell us? Because Vera obviously was like, I'm not telling the police. They didn't do anything last time. She came to be like, hey, did you hear about the break-in? Like, it might lead to more investigation. I think she's just checking in to fill her in. So she just starts to ask questions, but then she sees the manuscript, and she's like, oh, hey. And Julia kind of tries to hide it, and I think in doing that, it made it more suspicious. And so she's like, oh, I'm going to take this. I need light reading, and she just takes it, which I don't think is legal. Don't they have to have, like, a warrant?
If you're a police officer, let us know.
Well, let us know.
It depends on cause, if they have enough cause.
If they,
something, I don't know.
So she takes the manuscript, and she leaves, and Julia's just so like, ugh, Oliver, you idiot, like... Did you kill your brother?
So the police have the manuscript.
So the police have the manuscript. Vera gets home. Julia fills her in on like, holy cow, did you read the manuscript? did you feel like Oliver might be guilty? And Vera's like, do you know what? I've been talking to Riki. I've been talking to Sana. Do you know what'd be super fun? Sherlock Holmes goes through all the suspects and then can figure out who the murderer is. So what if we have a big party, we invite everyone over, we'll talk about everyone's connections, and we'll figure it all out. Doesn't that
All
sound
together.
so fun?
That's
All
such a
together.
party.
Black tie event.
Black tie.
Black tie event.
Whoa.
So they plan it, invite everyone. Oliver, though, has a knock on his door, and the police come and arrest him and have a warrant to search his house.
Well,
The manuscript, I guess, was enough evidence to search him. He complies and goes to the station with them and is like, he has no idea that they have the manuscript. And he's like, so what is this about? And the officer brings it up like, hey, we read in your manuscript that like this, and it just seems really close to real life. She makes it very clear that they have enough to kind of try him on this. And he's like, I want an attorney. I want to like, hold on a second. And then she's like, honestly, yeah, you have the right to leave. And then he shows up at the black tie affair. Vera goes through Riki's situation, talks about how Riki was connected. So she really is just kind of giving everyone's dirty laundry out. And Sana doesn't know all of this, and Sana's like, you helped him scam artists and like do all these bad things. Because Sana and him kind of have a connection by now. And so she's devastated of like, you were involved in that? And he's like, I had no idea. I just needed money. And then brings up Sana's situation. And so everyone's just kind of like, well, dang. And Oliver gets there and he tells them, what the crap? Why'd you give my manuscript away? Like, it has nothing to do with, I didn't kill Marshall. And so all of them are just kind of confused on what happened. Because all of them have connections to him on the night he died. But still, the murder hasn't been solved.
Can we place bets? Who do you think it is?
Oh yeah, that's fun.
Vera.
You think it's straight up Vera?
I kind of did too.
What about you? I think it was either the grandpa who didn't show up, or it was the random guy they mentioned once that she has tea with.
Okay.
We'll see.
I don't know why. I have no logic.
I also think it is the son.
Yeah?
Because it gives him, he's looking for something to give
To
Vera
distract
to
his
do
mom.
Yes.
so that she leaves him.
That's
But I don't know.
Yeah, true. I see that.
I don't know. Can you just tell me who it is?
Yeah. Julia actually ends up kicking Vera out of her house. Because they all just are like...
She's like, it's too much, and I don't need you obsessing over this. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, everyone's background and dirty laundry's coming out, and she just feels betrayed by everyone for like not telling her the truth at the beginning. So she's just like, everyone get out of my house, Vera, you included. Vera goes to her apartment and is just so sad. She loves Emma, and she just loves this new group of friends that she has, that she goes up into her room and crawls into a ball and just like, it's so sad. She ends up getting pneumonia, going to the hospital. They all kind of like get back together because of that. While she's in the hospital, they clean up the coffee shop. Sana paints a mural on the wall, makes it look beautiful, except for she accidentally says the tea horse instead of the tea house. Vera Wong's tea horse. Like, maybe Vera won't notice. Oliver and Julia, like, he's like, I'm not in love with you anymore. It really was just a story. Like, let's not be weird. We can be friends. I want to, like, be in Emma's life. They bring Vera to the tea house. She's just so thrilled and overjoyed at how it looks. She loves it. And she's kind of like, we should make some tea for Alex. Because we forgot about Alex this whole time. Like, just hoping he's doing well. He comes to the tea house, and Oliver's like, Dad? Alex is Oliver's and Marshall's dad.
Oh.
Missy? I can't believe you put that together. So Alex obviously hasn't been coming to the tea house ever since the death, because the night of Marshall's death, he met up with his dad at that restaurant. And when Riki came in and hit him, he's like, what on earth have you gotten yourself into? The dad kind of looked at his phone, and there were just texts and texts and texts about people saying, you owe me money, like, give me your money, like, what are you doing? And it just clicked for his dad. This had been like his golden son. Oliver was the bad son. And he asks him, like, but you're the good one. Like, you bring groceries to my door every week. And he's like, what groceries? He's like, that's not you? He's like, no, I don't bring groceries to your door. And it clicked, like, that's Oliver. Well, you do this really good thing. No, I don't. Oh, that's Oliver. And your marriage is broken. Like, so he just is so disappointed in his son that he breaks into the tea house, gets the duck something.
Like sauce or something.
Something, yeah, that Vera has for her teas, and gives it to Marshall.
Straight up just kills his son.
Yeah. Feels horrible about it.
It's extreme, right?
A little extreme.
I mean, disappointment to the max.
And so that's why he just, like, locks himself away. And that's really, like, how it ends.
Okay.
I mean, Vera has a happy ending of Vera being like, we did it!
But does Alex go to jail at all or anything?
I don't know, I didn't read the epilogue. I didn't listen to the epilogue. How did you get that? Debbie said she got it too. I did not see that coming.
I don't know. I think just characters like why was that in there if it didn't need to be? Like, there's gotta be something to circle back.
But the thing about this one, telling it to you guys, I was like, this is the most boring story of my whole life. Reading it and listening to it, I
was so fun.
loved it.
That's cute.
Loved it.
So
loved
what
it,
would you rate
loved it? I think I would give it 5.
Cute.
It's up there. Like, I just loved it. I didn't give Vera justice. She has so many good. She made me laugh out loud so many times.
She feels like your Asian grandma.
I love her. I love her so much.
Mhm.
So, book is way better than the summary.